NFL is now underway. We are into the games here in our next quarterfinal matchups of the 2022 Speed Chess Championship. Thanks for being with us, everybody. And the day is underway. Magnus Carlsen, a classical Nimzo, Danya.
Let's go. Carlsen, Caruan. I can't believe we're watching this. Magnus has the white pieces here. And this 94 variation, which has been around since the medieval times of Garry Kasparov in the 90s.
It's an interesting approach. The white queen is often okay on c2. You're going to develop naturally with e3 and bishop d3. The pawn already guards b4. But Fabi playing quickly here, so he's clearly got some sort of prep he's about to show, given how quickly he committed to this line. Like, hey, Magnus, I wasn't surprised by your classical Nimzo.
Yeah, and taking the first think of the game, developing the knight to c6, which should also be pointed out. In this line, you often try to push c5, but recently, players have actually been pushing on the king side. g7, g5, and then h7, h5 is actually not out of the question, even if you've castled kingside, because that bishop experiences a lot of problems. And if white has to play h3 in response to that, Danny, then after knight takes g3, white's entire kingside structure is ruined and the e-pawn is weak. So I think Fabi is thinking between bishop f5 and a tame move like rook e8, which he's just played. But that's not such a tame move after all. He's setting up knight takes d4 threats.
Wow, knight takes d4. If pawn takes, we move this knight, discover check. Bob's your uncle on e1 and drops the rook. Man, I love highlighting as you speak. Can we keep this relationship more often? I feel like I learn more for coming from the school for kids who don't chess good.
Who don't chess good. You arrow good though. So
I graduated from the school where kids don't chess good to arrow good. All right. Well, the rook is on e8. There are immediate threats with knight takes d4. Jokes aside, and I love your point about g5 and h5. It's such an instructive thing to see that normally blocking a c-pawn in a queen's pawn game, which is any real central structure where the queen pawns are the ones that are the furthest, most advanced, everyone, is a queen's pawn game. And normally you want the c-pawn open, but in this case, getting yourself in a spot to focus on the king side, this is some dynamic stuff, and Magnus is already down 20 seconds on the clock.
Yeah, this is an incredibly dynamic position with a ton of options on every move. We see Magnus going for the more pedestrian knight f3.
Yeah.
White can also castle queenside here. That's not out of the question either, although, of course, the queenside is not exactly the safest place to be.
Yeah.
But with black unable to open up the c-file easily, that really builds the case for white going queenside rather than kingside. And now where is Fabi going to deploy his bishop? F5 or g4? Or is he going to resort back to g7, g5?
Here he goes. He's in on it. Is he going to go g4 or
h5? Come on, Fabi.
If g4, I expect knight e5 will be played to prevent knight takes d4 tactics. But note, everybody, if the knight went anywhere else, you might be right back there. So instead, he plays Danya's h5. This is, I'm going to be honest. Okay, this is earliest game one. But if I'm honest about how I would have been in Fabi's corner, massaging his shoulders, chess boxing style, I would say, look, bro, you've got to go after him. Like, we're not here to mess around, right? You've got to go after Magnus and get points early and often in these slower time controls. So I love what I'm seeing here.
And from personal experience playing Magnus in long blitz matches, I think his one tiny Achilles heel, I mean, yes, who am I to talk about Magnus's Achilles heel? I can understand the irony of that. But he is a bit of a slow starter. It sometimes takes him a couple of games to get warmed up. And listen, we saw this against Gukesh. It was 1-1. Gukesh had many chances in the first 5-6 games. I think Fabi noticed that, and he says, hey, this is where I'm going to try to strike. Every game is important. Every opportunity has to be exploited. And Magnus kind of struggling to find a move here. He simply ignores the threat of h4. Wow.
Is that a bishop that can be trapped, or are you just happy to see me, Danya? h4, bishop e5, f6. There's
bishop takes e4. Yeah, it's a classic idea, actually. And then queen takes e4 with a check on g6.
Speaking of slow starter, can we just call out that Magnus looks like he needs a banana. Remember last show where we had bananas at the ready? Magnus is looking like he needs some potassium, a little vitamin B, maybe a little caffeine. he is looking a little exhausted there. Let's bring up the analysis board if we can real quick, just to show some of these variations, because we are in a sharp position here. If f6 occurs, bishop takes e4, take, shake and bake. Mom helped, right? Takes e5 and we get check. White has at least a draw, but maybe even more, right?
Knight takes g5. Yeah, White's got the draw in his pocket with queen h6 check, but knight g5 is possible. You could also go queen h6 check and then knight takes g5. So you could really massage this in many different ways, and Fabi wants to avoid a scenario like this if he can. So f6 is not forced here, Danny. You could consider knight takes e5. You could consider bishop f5, but the thing is, you've already committed to all of these pawn moves, and then suddenly reverting back to a normal developing move, I actually think that might be the way to go, preventing bishop takes e4.
Okay, pawns can't go back. Thanks, Captain Obvious, but it is important when they push in front of your king to remind ourselves of those basic rules. And we, by the way, have h4 and bishop e5 on the board. So your suggestion of bishop f5 looking more and more prophetic, coming from the prophet, called it.
There we go. Yeah, he just didn't want that scenario where Magnus has at least a perpetual. Pretty terrifying. And now f6 is a massive threat, so h3 might be what the doctor ordered for Magnus.
Yeah, f6 traps the bishop, so you've got to do something spicy now before that bishop gets in trouble. He has 2.5 minutes. He is up 30, even 40 seconds right now on Caruan. So talk about a game that gave us a little bit of an opening struggle, Danya. These guys spent a lot of time navigating whatever this theory or prep was, and only 15 moves have been played, and we're about to be under time pressure.
And here comes c5, I think, trying to drive that pawn down to c4 and exploit the awkwardness of that relationship between the bishop and the queen, but Fabi taking more of a slow roll approach. And yes, we're going to get a lot of time scrambles in this match just because of the incredibly complex style of both players. They are such principled players. They're going to get complex positions every game. And I think a big determining factor is going to be who can keep their wits about them in middle game time scrambles. Yeah.
Well, now Magnus is still in that lounging position. I see chat saying he's bummed he's missing the semifinal of one of the World Cup games.
Hey, chat, please don't tell me the score. I'm recording it.
Yeah, no World Cup spoilers for Danya. I don't really care. You can whisper to me, although my whispers are blocked on Twitch for good reason. So, frankly, do whatever you want to do, chat. Shout out to featured chat, though. We'll be checking in with you throughout the day. So, jokes aside, give us your comments. See your comment read on air. And ultimately, comments will be read to the winner of this match at the end. So play along with us, chat. All right, castles, rook c8. Here comes c5 for black. As you said, I'm expecting it. Bishop g6 first. A little solid.
Fabi delaying c5, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Maybe bishop g6 can come to h5 at some point to harass indirectly the pawn on e5. Also, putting the bishop on a defended square is a good idea. Now knight d2 threats are eliminated. I like Fabi's position. I think he's doing fine here. But once he plays c5, things are kind of going to explode.
Yeah. It's funny, because now that the bishop is protected, you're right, you're not worried about pins. This knight can't really move without this pawn hanging in a lot of positions. So let me ask you, does Fabi have to play c5? Like, what's to just kind of sitting in this position? What is White's plan, I guess, to ask the question directly? Oh, here we go.
Not an easy position, but knight to h2. What a move by Carlsen. Now, his idea is obvious. You're pointing it out, but it looks like it hangs the e5 pawn, which Fabi grabs. But f3 and bishop takes g6, Danny. That queen is going to appear on g6. And guess what? Fabi's moved b7, b6. Yeah. He's going to pay for it. That pawn on c6 can be captured.
Wow.
Oh, he missed it. Look at he missed that pawn.
Magnus spotted that. What
an idea.
What an idea, and what foresight to see the weakness of b6. When we have a second, let's head over to the Batcave and bring the analysis board back. I want to just show the killer instinct from the great white shark that is Magnus Carlsen. Look at this position. We talked about maybe white doesn't have a clear plan, but b6 creates just a subtle problem at the end of the line. And note that Fabi has to take e5, because otherwise the knight comes to g4, you take e4, and the pony pops. So this combination that Magnus spotted is just incredible.
I mean, knight h2 is such a 7-head move, and things kind of getting crazy in the endgame. It still looks dangerous for white with that knight sitting on g3. Danny, there are some mating ideas for black, but Magnus has left himself plenty of time to navigate the complexity here. I think he's going to take this game. He could play e4 here. He could give a check on e5. I'm going to let him do the calculation, but back to your point, knight h2 and f3. What a concept by Magnus.
Yeah, and again, like it was a good concept regardless with the pawns on e5, but it only really works because the c6 pawn is hanging at the end, and we saw Fabi's reaction in real time. What a combo. Magnus Carlsen, not the worst chess player I've ever seen.
Only the second worst.
Only the second worst. All right, rook d8 played. Bobby's not going to give this one up, and the time scramble will be commencing. It shall commence.
It shallst, but it's only a one-sided time scroll, and I think Magnus could send his f-pawn up as well. F4, d3, f5, d2. I mean, it's still a 3-result game, but White's pawns should decide with accurate play. Finally, Magnus sits up.
Yeah, well, he's going to get under. Oh, not yet.
Uh-oh.
He plays f4. Oh, my gosh. Here we go. Get your running shoes on. The pawns are pushing. Who gets there faster? Rook c1's coming, man. This is...
f6 check, king d6, and White loses the e6 pawn. I think Magnus might have overlooked that. Crazy, Danny.
By the way, he woke up. Thank you, Velvet Canyon, for waking up, chat.
Gosh.
Give us your comments. We love featured chat. King d6, rook c1. He has to play knight e3. Okay, he finds it.
Knight e2 check, and then the king escapes the pin, so that's not possible. Fabi brings his king up.
Oh, rook d7.
Oh, that's a knife. That's a knife right there. Take d2.
He's going to pick up the pawns, and it's falling apart for Fabi.
Totally winning now,
but only 4 seconds for Magnus. This is blunderable, man. This is blunderable.
100%. Knight takes f5, tries to capture. No, but just take an e7. Yeah, this is over.
Here comes the queen.
Yeah.
Oh, man. You got problems here. Unreal. What a game one.